Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Spectre here for another edition of Midnight Rider. Good to have you aboard on this now the 19th day of January. I guess we'll call this Inauguration Eve, perhaps, if you want to call it that. Fraudulent Eve, whatever. Nonetheless, we'll witness something very, very interesting to take place tomorrow, I am certain. On the broadcast tonight, it looks like still getting connected here across the board. We got YouTube up, Twitch up, DLive up, and looks like Tiger Network is not wanting to cooperate here this evening. We'll give it a time or two here to see if it connects. Nonetheless, tonight we're going to cover the final hours of DJT's first term. Some of the things going on here in the last little bit pertaining to the pardons, as well as people resigning, etc., etc., D-Class. Also, in regards to AdL and Big Tech, what is going on there, and of course some other bits and pieces here, all before tomorrow's goings-on. So that being said, I will see you back here momentarily on the other side. Public Law 59/57. The General Authorization 50. The Casting Board of Governors made public diplomacy program and use of words abroad about the United States, its people, through press, internet, and other, including information centers, instructors, and other direct or indirect means. Section 208, clarification on domestic distribution of program material. Section of construction in this section to prohibit the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of engaging in any medium or community or directed States domestic audience is or may be the program material exposure such medium when appropriate per sections 505 the United States and Educational Exchange Act 8 see 1462 and 1437 that nothing in this section may be construed to authorize the Department of State or the Broadcasting Board of Governors to disseminate within the United States material prepared for dissemination abroad before the effective date of Section 1078 of the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal 13. The ND work is being flash by 2013 out of the U.S. repeals propaganda government to Americans, a so-called law protecting arm from delivering programming to American audiences, which led into House Resolution 6, otherwise Myth Modernization Act to be in the United States, and signed into law before December 2016. Obama countering Propaganda Act into law. Our enemies are using foreign propaganda and disinformation against us, and so has been asleep at the wheel. But today, with this finally, enough is enough. And within that article, we get to find out about the NDAA of 2017. Underneath 2940 House 81, otherwise known as propaganda and disinformation of Trump and the Information Warfare Act of 2016. Brought to us by the Constitution of America, disinformation from China and others like that. The U.S. Ministry of Truth is officially, and we got to get big tech involved, right? Flash forward into September 2017. Why is Google hiring thousands of journalists to flood newsrooms around America? Well, we did that. It's a question. Facebook to envelop local news, otherwise known as Section 230 that we all know and love. 47 U.S. Code Section 230 for private block of offensive material. A lot in the news about that here lately, and whether or not big tech can actually from a claims by the company that it's a social media service is a platform. Couch has this. Most of Facebook has tied billionaire George. It's time to wake up, America, and continues to be unreliable. Has been. Alright, welcome back everybody. That took a little bit longer than expected. See some of you guys saying I'm clipping bad out there. I'm not sure why. It appears signal's good across the board on my side. The only thing I'm not being able to connect to this evening for whatever reason, over on Tora 3, over on Tiger Network. I'm going to try maybe one more time here before I get started. See if it reestablishes a connection here, and we'll get going, but not sure what the heck is going on here. But anyway, we'll march on through as usual. So tonight, like I said on the broadcast, we're going to cover some more of what is going on around D.C., the final hours that POTUS has here with a lot of the executive orders that he's kicking out, as well as the pardon situation, as well as various folks resigning last minute. And then, of course, we're going to jump back into big tech and the AdL and everything else that's going on around that in order to kind of round things out here this evening before all of the goings on tomorrow, which should make for some very interesting stories, I guess. Let's leave it at that. We really don't know where this is going to head. We have speculation, so maybe I'll round it out tonight with maybe just a little open Q&A here toward the end with kind of a what-if type scenario. So stick around, and let's just jump right in. So first up tonight, kind of continuing on a theme from last night about what's been going on around D.C. and the militarization of D.C., out of Zero Hedge this evening, media cheers D.C. under military occupation. This authored by Michael Tracy over on Medium. Says downtown Washington, D.C. is currently under what essentially amounts to military occupation. The streets are locked down, guarded by army vehicles, and blocked off by huge, garish checkpoints. Vehicular traffic is limited to motorists who can show papers, demonstrating that, as one guardsman told me, they're conducting legitimate business. Apparently, this includes Uber drivers and food delivery workers. And of course, last night, if you remember, I already showed a lot of video of said checkpoints and that around D.C. as well. According to official estimates, 25,000 military personnel are now deployed to the area, on top of countless federal, state, and local law enforcement agents. Troops roam around carrying rifles with no ammo loaded, and if you can manage to navigate on foot to the perimeter of the National Mall, you encounter an enormous fencing apparatus, complete with barbed wire. And of course, Michael Tracy shows here, says TV media has clearly settled on a dramatic backdrop image. Very, very interesting. It's almost like they're trying to shape a narrative, isn't it? So it begs a question. Does anyone with a media job find this situation to be worthy of some further inquiry? Or, in other words, worthy of questioning the premise of why such an extravagantly intensive military presence is allegedly necessary? Is it proportionate to the scale of the purported threat? Has the nature of the threat itself, whatever that might be exactly, been adequately probed to determine whether it's grounded in reality? Already, a bunch of purported threats initially trumpeted across the media, with the usual 5-alarm 5 hysteria, have dissipated in short order. So, there is perhaps some good reason for doubt in that regard. And I guess I'll pause there and kind of have to laugh when he says, is it based or grounded in reality? Well, what part of the Mockingbird media to this day has anything to do with reality other than the one that they try to create via their gaslighting attempts, right? So maybe that would be the better question. Instead of applying a modicum of skepticism to this gigantic show of military force, much of which appears to be security theater, in its purest form, our vaunted media is doing little other than cheering it on, and of course, inflating the threats being cited as justification for it. They can repeat over and over again that what occurred on January 6th at the Capitol was an attempted coup, and therefore, everything and anything is justified to retaliate. But everyone with a brain by now should be able to recognize that the government was never at a greater than 0% risk of being overthrown that day. Fear-inducing terms like insurrection, domestic terrorism, seditious conspiracy, armed rebellion, and others have been marshaled intentionally to ensure the public to extreme actions such as a swiftly executed corporate censorship purge and now the transformation of the country's capital into a military fortress. It's doubly odd because the deployment of military personnel to various cities last summer, though generally welcomed by locals and intended to quell what had genuinely been a sudden outburst of destructive chaos, was depicted by media members at the time as the rawest incarnation of violent fascism. The New York Times nearly imploded in a spasm of wild outrage. Suddenly, though, this unprecedented militarization of D.C. is greeted by the same media hive mind as the triumph of good over evil, light over darkness. It's almost like the ultimate variable is not principled apprehension about the force of the state, but whose political priorities are being defended by such force, and who is being punished. Very, very interesting, isn't it? And of course, some very, very interesting terms there that probably many of us will pick up on that have been following this stuff for the better part of 3 years now, right? Dark to light, good versus evil, and theater tend to stick out in this piece. So again, are we watching a movie? I guess we will soon find out tomorrow, right? So in that regard, we find out this out of the Epoch Times. With 25,000 troops, of course, we found out that the FBI had to go through and vet many of these guys. And I'm not sure why, but apparently Joe and company, this being a virtual deal, I don't understand why the scaredy catness, if you will, of these guys being around. Why so concerned about their voting preference or things of that nature, right? So we find out 12 National Guard troops pulled from duty in Washington ahead of inauguration. And I think it started off this morning, there was only 2, but it had since migrated to about a dozen. But a dozen National Guard troops in D.C. were yanked from duty because of inappropriate comments and other issues, officials confirmed on Tuesday. 2 of the 12 were pulled because of inappropriate comments or text, General Daniel Hawkinson, the National Guard chief, told reporters at the Pentagon. One of those was flagged within the chain of command, while the other was informed on by someone over a tip line. The other 10 were flagged by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which was vetting the entire 25,000 force that descended upon the nation's capital from across the country ahead of President-elect Joe Biden's inauguration. If you look at 25,000, we've had 12 identified, and some of those they're just looking into. It may be unrelated to this, Hawkinson said. We work very closely with law enforcement, and if there's any identification or anything whatsoever that needs to be looked into, out of an abundance of caution, we automatically pull those personnel off the line and make sure that they're not part of the mission set. And in certain cases, we make sure that we get them sent home, he added. The names of the 12 or any other identifying information, such as their home states, were not shared. The FBI was vetting through a criminal history check and a review of civilian database. We're not taking any chances. Anything flags, if there's any reason that somebody's name is brought to the attention of the command, well, they're being removed from the line. We'll ask questions later, Pentagon Press Secretary Jonathan Hoffman said. Officials confirmed Monday that all 25,000 National Guard members in Washington were being vetted by the Department of Defense and the FBI. This type of vetting often takes place by law enforcement for significant security events, Acting Defense Secretary Christopher Miller said in a statement. However, in this case, the scope of military participation is unique. The D.C. National Guard is also providing additional training to service members as they arrive in D.C., that if they see or hear something that is not appropriate, they should report it to their chain of command. Major General William Walker, the head of the D.C. National Guard, said on ABC's Good Morning America that members were screened before leaving their states and screened again before being placed on patrol in Washington. It's all about the background, so a regular background check is enhanced with more screening, more details, and it's layered so the FBI is part of it. The Secret Service is part of it. And once they are certain there's no insider threat, then that soldier, guardsman, or airman is given a credential, he said. Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican, decried the vetting on Monday, warning that he would never send Texas National Guard troops to D.C. again if they are disrespected like this. So, very, very interesting. And again, one must has to consider, this actually has an operation name, and I don't recall what the actual operation name is. I've not come across it in articles, but I know I've heard people speak of it. So, is this a security detail that these guys were on, or is this something more? That is the question of the day. Nonetheless, over to POTUS in his final hours. We got his farewell address today. I'll go ahead and play that here momentarily. But Trump wishes Biden success in, quote, keeping America prosperous and safe. Interesting choice of words. Says after 4 years in office, during which no new foreign entanglements were initiated, President Trump is releasing his farewell remarks on Tuesday as he prepares to hand over to Joe Biden. Trump has opted not to participate in the inauguration ceremony, and instead of the usual pageantry, Joe Biden is reportedly planning to deliver an address roughly 20 to 30 minutes in length, focusing on the theme of unity. Yeah, good luck with that. As for President Trump, his team has leaked a short excerpt from his planned remarks to the press. He's expected to point out that he's the first president in decades who didn't start any new wars, while also proclaiming that the America First movement he started is only just the beginning. But as Bloomberg's report pointed out in the headline, Trump is also expected to say he is praying for Biden's success, what Bloomberg described as a rare gesture of goodwill toward his successor. This week, we inaugurate a new administration and pray for its success in keeping America safe and prosperous, Trump will say, according to excerpts released by the White House. He is also expected to denounce the outbreak of violence at the Capitol earlier this month, which has been used to justify a massive pre-inauguration quasi-lockdown in Washington, D.C. All Americans were horrified by the assault on our Capitol, he will say, according to the excerpts. Political violence is an attack on everything we cherish as Americans. It can never be tolerated. The prepared remarks were leaked first on Twitter by reporters for Bloomberg and the Washington Post, among other MSM news outlets. Well, isn't that fitting? POTUS himself can't put anything out, but it's perfectly okay for the Mockingbird media to just leak the excerpts out. Par for the course. Jennifer Jacobs, Biden's inauguration speech will last 20 to 30 minutes. Theme is unity, his aides say. She continues, Trump in his farewell speech will say, I am especially proud to be the first president in decades who has started no new wars. All Americans were horrified by the assault on our capital. Political violence is an attack on everything we cherish. And of course, she continues, these scripted words are what some advisors had been urging an irritable Trump to say all along. A new president is coming in January 20th, but the Trump movement isn't over. And Sung-Min Kim says, excerpt from Trump's farewell speech as released by the White House. Now, as I prepare to hand power over to a new administration at noon on Wednesday, I want you to know that the movement we started is only just beginning. A more comprehensive list of the main points Trump will hit in his pre-recorded video, which was reportedly recorded on Monday, can be found below. And there we see Christian Dadock as well saying inbox, there's the excerpts, etc. That came out here today. And of course, it also includes First Lady Melania Trump's released farewell video of her own earlier. I won't touch upon that, but nonetheless, if you've not seen that, I'll go ahead and drop the link for you guys to check that out. So that being said, let me go ahead and let this play through.
My fellow Americans, 4 years ago, we launched a great national effort to rebuild our country, to renew its spirit, and to restore the allegiance of this government to its citizens. In short, we embarked on a mission to make America great again for all Americans. As I conclude my term as the 45th President of the United States, I stand before you truly proud of what we have achieved together. We did what we came here to do, and so much more. This week, we inaugurate a new administration and pray for its success in keeping America safe and prosperous. We extend our best wishes, and we also want them to have luck, a very important word. I'd like to begin by thanking just a few of the amazing people who made our remarkable journey possible. First, let me express my overwhelming gratitude for the love and support of our spectacular First Lady, Melania. Let me also share my deepest appreciation to my daughter Ivanka, my son-in-law Jared, and to Barron, Don, Eric, Tiffany, and Lara. You fill my world with light and with joy. I also want to thank Vice President Mike Pence, his wonderful wife Karen, and the entire Pence family. Thank you as well to my Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, the dedicated members of the White House staff, and the cabinet, and all of the incredible people across our administration who poured out their heart and soul to fight for America. I also want to take a moment to thank a truly exceptional group of people, the United States Secret Service. My family and I will forever be in your debt. My profound gratitude as well to everyone in the White House Military Office, the teams of Marine One and Air Force One, every member of the armed forces, and state and local law enforcement all across our country. Most of all, I want to thank the American people. To serve as your president has been an honor beyond description. Thank you for this extraordinary privilege, and that's what it is, a great privilege and a great honor. We must never forget that while Americans will always have our disagreements, we are a nation of incredible, decent, faithful, and peace-loving citizens who all want our country to thrive and flourish and be very, very successful and good. We are a truly magnificent nation. All Americans were horrified by the assault on our Capitol. Political violence is an attack on everything we cherish as Americans. It can never be tolerated. Now more than ever, we must unify around our shared values and rise above the partisan rancor and forge our common destiny. 4 years ago, I came to Washington as the only true outsider ever to win the presidency. I had not spent my career as a politician, but as a builder looking at open skylines and imagining infinite possibilities. I ran for president because I knew there were towering new summits for America just waiting to be scaled. I knew the potential for our nation was boundless as long as we put America first. So I left behind my former life and stepped into a very difficult arena, but an arena nevertheless with all sorts of potential if properly done. America had given me so much, and I wanted to give something back. Together with millions of hardworking patriots across this land, we built the greatest political movement in the history of our country. We also built the greatest economy in the history of the world. It was about America first because we all wanted to make America great again. We restored the principle that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Our agenda was not about right or left. It wasn't about Republican or Democrat, but about the good of a nation, and that means the whole nation. With the support and prayers of the American people, we achieved more than anyone thought possible. Nobody thought we could even come close. We passed the largest package of tax cuts and reforms in American history. We slashed more job-killing regulations than any administration had ever done before. We fixed our broken trade deals, withdrew from the horrible Trans-Pacific Partnership and the impossible Paris Climate Accord, renegotiated the one-sided South Korea deal, and we replaced NAFTA with the groundbreaking USMCA. That's Mexico and Canada, a deal that's worked out very, very well. Also, and very importantly, we imposed historic and monumental tariffs on China, made a great new deal with China. But before the ink was even dry, we and the whole world got hit with the China virus. Our trade relationship was rapidly changing. Billions and billions of dollars were pouring into the U.S., but the virus forced us to go in a different direction. The whole world suffered, but America outperformed other countries economically because of our incredible economy and the economy that we built. Without the foundations and footings, it wouldn't have worked out this way. We wouldn't have some of the best numbers we've ever had. We also unlocked our energy resources and became the world's #1 producer of oil and natural gas, by far. Powered by these policies, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We reignited America's job creation and achieved record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women, almost everyone. Income soared, wages boomed, the American dream was restored, and millions were lifted from poverty in just a few short years. It was a miracle. The stock market set one record after another, with 148 stock market highs during this short period of time, and boosted the retirements and pensions of hardworking citizens all across our nation. 401ks are at a level they've never been at before. We've never seen numbers like we've seen, and that's before the pandemic and after the pandemic. We rebuilt the American manufacturing base, opened up thousands of new factories, and brought back the beautiful phrase, made in the USA. To make life better for working families, we doubled the child tax credit and signed the largest ever expansion of funding for child care and development. We joined with the private sector to secure commitments to train more than 16 million American workers for the jobs of tomorrow. When our nation was hit with the terrible pandemic, we produced not one, but 2 vaccines with record-breaking speed, and more will quickly follow. They said it couldn't be done, but we did it. They called it a medical miracle, and that's what they're calling it right now, a medical miracle. Another administration would have taken 3, 4, 5, maybe even up to 10 years to develop a vaccine. We did it in 9 months. We grieve for every life lost, and we pledge in their memory to wipe out this horrible pandemic once and for all. When the virus took its brutal toll on the world's economy, we launched the fastest economic recovery our country has ever seen. We passed nearly $4 trillion in economic relief, saved or supported over 50 million jobs, and slashed the unemployment rate in half. These are numbers that our country has never seen before. We created choice and transparency in healthcare, stood up to Big Pharma in so many ways, but especially in our effort to get favored nations clauses added, which will give us the lowest prescription drug prices anywhere in the world. We passed VA choice, VA accountability, right to try, and landmark criminal justice reform. We confirmed 3 new justices of the United States Supreme Court. We appointed nearly 300 federal judges to interpret our Constitution as written. For years, the American people pleaded with Washington to finally secure the nation's borders. I am pleased to say we answered that plea and achieved the most secure border in U.S. history. We have given our brave border agents and heroic ICE officers the tools they need to do their jobs better than they have ever done before and to enforce our laws and keep America safe. We proudly leave the next administration with the strongest and most robust border security measures ever put into place. This includes historic agreements with Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, along with more than 450 miles of powerful new wall. We restored American strength at home and American leadership abroad. The world respects us again. Please don't lose that respect. We reclaimed our sovereignty by standing up for America at the United Nations and withdrawing from the one-sided global deals that never served our interests. And NATO countries are now paying hundreds of billions of dollars more than when I arrived just a few years ago. It was very unfair. We were paying the cost for the world. Now the world is helping us. And perhaps most importantly of all, with nearly $3 trillion, we fully rebuilt the American military, all made in the USA. We launched the first new branch of the United States Armed Forces in 75 years, the Space Force. And last spring, I stood at Kennedy Space Center in Florida and watched as American astronauts returned to space on American rockets for the first time in many, many years. We revitalized our alliances and rallied the nations of the world to stand up to China like never before. We obliterated the ISIS caliphate and ended the wretched life of its founder and leader, al-Baghdadi. We stood up to the oppressive Iranian regime and killed the world's top terrorist, Iranian butcher Qasem Soleimani. We recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. As a result of our bold diplomacy and principled realism, we achieved a series of historic peace deals in the Middle East. Nobody believed it could happen. The Abraham Accords opened the doors to a future of peace and harmony, not violence and bloodshed. It is the dawn of a new Middle East, and we are bringing our soldiers home. I am especially proud to be the first president in decades who has started no new wars. Above all, we have reasserted the sacred idea that in America, the government answers to the people. Our guiding light, our North Star, our unwavering conviction has been that we are here to serve the noble, everyday citizens of America. Our allegiance is not to the special interests, corporations, or global entities. It's to our children, our citizens, and to our nation itself. As president, my top priority, my constant concern, has always been the best interests of American workers and American families. I did not seek the easiest course. By far, it was actually the most difficult. I did not seek the path that would get the least criticism. I took on the tough battles, the hardest fights, the most difficult choices, because that's what you elected me to do. Your needs were my first and last unyielding focus. This, I hope, will be our greatest legacy. Together, we put the American people back in charge of our country. We restored self-government. We restored the idea that in America, no one is forgotten because everyone matters and everyone has a voice. We fought for the principle that every citizen is entitled to equal dignity, equal treatment, and equal rights because we are all made equal by God. Everyone is entitled to be treated with respect, to have their voice heard, and to have their government listen. You are loyal to your country, and my administration was always loyal to you. We worked to build a country in which every citizen could find a great job and support their wonderful families. We fought for the communities where every American could be safe and schools where every child could learn. We promoted a culture where our laws would be upheld, our heroes honored, our history preserved, and law-abiding citizens are never taken for granted. Americans should take tremendous satisfaction in all that we have achieved together. It's incredible. Now, as I leave the White House, I have been reflecting on the dangers that threaten the priceless inheritance we all share. As the world's most powerful nation, America faces constant threats and challenges from abroad. But the greatest danger we face is a loss of confidence in ourselves, a loss of confidence in our national greatness. A nation is only as strong as its spirit. We are only as dynamic as our pride. We are only as vibrant as the faith that beats in the hearts of our people. No nation can long thrive that loses faith in its own values, history, and heroes, for these are the very sources of our unity and our vitality. What has always allowed America to prevail and triumph over the great challenges of the past has been an unyielding and unashamed conviction in the nobility of our country and its unique purpose in history. We must never lose this conviction. We must never forsake our belief in America. The key to national greatness lies in sustaining and instilling our shared national identity. That means focusing on what we have in common, the heritage that we all share. At the center of this heritage is also a robust belief in free expression, free speech, and open debate. Only if we forget who we are and how we got here could we ever allow political censorship and blacklisting to take place in America. It's not even thinkable. Shutting down free and open debate violates our core values and most enduring traditions. In America, we don't insist on absolute conformity or enforce rigid orthodoxies and punitive speech codes. We just don't do that. America is not a timid nation of tame souls who need to be sheltered and protected from those with whom we disagree. That's not who we are. It will never be who we are. For nearly 250 years, in the face of every challenge, Americans have always summoned our unmatched courage, confidence, and fierce independence. These are the miraculous traits that once led millions of everyday citizens to set out across a wild continent and carve out a new life in the Great West. It was the same profound love of our God-given freedom that willed our soldiers into battle and our astronauts into space. As I think back on the past 4 years, one image rises in my mind above all others. Whenever I traveled all along the motorcade route, there were thousands and thousands of people. They came out with their families so that they could stand as we passed and proudly wave our great American flag. It never failed to deeply move me. I knew that they did not just come out to show their support of me. They came out to show me their support and love for our country. This is a republic of proud citizens who are united by our common conviction that America is the greatest nation in all of history. We are and must always be a land of hope, of light, and of glory to all the world. This is the precious inheritance that we must safeguard at every single turn. For the past 4 years, I have worked to do just that. From a great hall of Muslim leaders in Riyadh to a great square of Polish people in Warsaw, from the floor of the Korean Assembly to the podium at the United Nations General Assembly, and from the Forbidden City in Beijing to the shadow of Mount Rushmore, I fought for you, I fought for your family, I fought for our country. Above all, I fought for America and all it stands for, and that is safe, strong, proud, and free. Now, as I prepare to hand power over to a new administration at noon on Wednesday, I want you to know that the movement we started is only just beginning. There's never been anything like it. The belief that a nation must serve its citizens will not dwindle, but instead only grow stronger by the day. As long as the American people hold in their hearts deep and devoted love of country, then there is nothing that this nation cannot achieve. Our communities will flourish, our people will be prosperous, our traditions will be cherished, our faith will be strong, and our future will be brighter than ever before. I go from this majestic place with a loyal and joyful heart, an optimistic spirit, and a supreme confidence that for our country and for our children, the best is yet to come. Thank you and farewell. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
And there we have it, in the words of POTUS. One last time. Let's see here. Reports are claiming VP Pence has joined the growing list of turncoats Republicans who won't be attending Trump's farewell shindig at Joint Base Andrews. And I think McCarthy as well as McConnell are some other names in that have joined that list as well. All right, well, aside from that, the goings-on here today, out of just the news, over at John Solomon's site, CIA announces Director Gina Haspel's retirement, so apparently she will not be sticking around for old Biden's administration. The CIA announced Tuesday that Director Gina Haspel is leaving the agency, ending a 3-decade spy career that shattered a glass ceiling. The announcement was made via a Twitter post by the Central Intelligence Agency, which thanked Haspel for her 36 years of dedicated service to the American people. Really? Haspel said in the post, "It has been the greatest honor in my life to lead this organization." Haspel is a respected career officer and the first female director of the nation's premier spy agency. A U.S. official said Haspel wanted to announce her retirement a day early so she could thank her colleagues formally, but would be staying on the job through noon Eastern Wednesday, when Joe Biden is inaugurated president. And there we see the tweet here. It says the CIA workforce thanks Director Haspel for her 36 years of dedicated service to the American people. You have broken barriers and empowered the next generation of CIA officers. And there we see her statement there. So I guess I might question, to the American people, really? That was a service to us. Did you know that? I was not aware that she was in service to us. Nonetheless, continuing on, we also get out of Solomon here. I'm not going to break this down too much, just for the simple fact that we'll see more tomorrow. But Solomon put this tweet out here earlier this evening. Says, breaking: Trump formally declassifies Russia documents over objections of the FBI. And so we knew this was coming, the declass was coming, and it is, as the article goes on to state that tomorrow by about noontime we should actually see the foot-high stack of documents partly declassified, but partly redacted, I should say, for the populace to take a peek at. Apparently there had been some back and forth with the FBI on what should or shouldn't be. POTUS basically overrode them, and basically they semi-compromised on some moderate redactions, according to the article, and so we'll get to witness that and parse it accordingly probably tomorrow. So we'll be on the lookout for that and probably give a more detailed report out at that time. That being said, as far as pardons go, yesterday we talked on the broadcast that POTUS had about 100 pardons in that he was planning on doing. A lot of speculation as to whether or not Snowden and or Assange would be on that list, but I think we get a little extra color around that here today out of Breitbart. Says report, White House counsel Pat Cipollone blocking Assange pardon. So those that may be thinking that Assange would have been part of that 100, I guess we'll have to wait until the very, very end to see. This is a last-ditch effort to persuade President Donald Trump to issue a preemptive pardon to WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is reportedly being blocked by White House counsel Pat Cipollone, according to reports. A high-level source in the Trump administration reported to Breitbart News that while the president is sympathetic to pardoning Assange, Cipollone is not, and the continued opposition of the White House counsel is making a pardon increasingly unlikely. Trump could still overrule Cipollone if he wished. He has the legal authority to do so, but it appears that the president continues to heed the latter's advice. In a recent Wall Street Journal op-ed, the establishment newspaper praised Cipollone for reining in President Trump in the closing days of his administration, when the easier route would be to resign to outside applause. Condemning President Trump's recent words and behavior, the journal praised officials like Cipollone for putting the brakes on the president. Every official has to search his conscience amid Mr. Trump's actions. An outside moral judgment is easy and often wrong. Many good people are trying to prevent more bad decisions, said the journal. Outside of the administration, high-profile conservatives and Republicans have urged President Trump to pardon Julian Assange. Those voices included Tucker Carlson, who once again urged the president to trust his instincts in a segment that aired yesterday. Assange's primary crime, said Carlson, was humiliating the powerful. Sarah Palin, the former governor of Alaska and vice presidential candidate, has also backed a pardon for Assange. He deserves a pardon. He deserves all of us to understand more about what he has done in the name of real journalism, and that's getting to the bottom of issues that the public really needs to hear about and benefit from, said Palin in a video last month. Others pushing for a pardon include Rep. Matt Gaetz, Tulsi Gabbard, and Rep. Thomas Massie. Well, not to be outdone and countering that point, Big League Politics had this to say. Report, Senate Republicans threaten President Trump with impeachment to prevent him from pardoning Assange and Snowden. The deep state wins again. Oh, Mitch. Yeah. President Donald Trump is not expected to pardon whistleblowers Snowden and Assange before leaving office tomorrow, with Senate Republicans holding impeachment over his head to stop him from striking back against the deep state. The Mercury News has reported that Trump is also not expected to pardon Edward Snowden or Julian Assange, whose roles in revealing U.S. secrets infuriated official Washington. While he had once entertained the idea, Trump decided against it because he did not want to anger Senate Republicans, who will soon determine whether he's convicted during his Senate trial. Multiple GOP lawmakers had sent messages through aides that they felt strongly about not granting clemency to Assange or Snowden, they wrote. President Trump will reportedly not pardon Assange and Snowden because he wants to placate the GOP swamp following the January 6th siege on the U.S. Capitol, which has caused many prominent Republicans to turn on the president and blame him for violence that occurred. As he departs office, Trump has expressed real concern that Republicans could turn on him. Could turn on him? I think they already have. Have they not? Have they not already shown their true colors by their votes back on the 6th? A conviction in the Senate impeachment trial would limit his future political activities and strip him of some of the government perks of being an ex-president, the Mercury News stated. Trump is less worried about being barred from running from office again and more concerned with the optics of being convicted by the Senate, people familiar with the matter said, and the report continued. President Trump will be letting down his most fervent supporters who have joined a large bipartisan coalition to urge the president to pardon Assange and Snowden, as Big League Politics has reported. President Donald Trump is being urged by a bipartisan coalition to pardon whistleblowers advocate Julian Assange, who is facing charges under the Espionage Act for reporting accurately on war crimes and other heinous government and corporate abuses. The WikiLeaks founder has been brutalized in a hellish supermax prison in Britain, awaiting possible extradition to the U.S. for nearly 2 years now. Trump has a chance to foil the deep state's plans to make an example of Assange and set the precedent for other journalists to be attacked in a similar manner. An eclectic mix of individuals, including hardcore Trump backers, far-left civil liberties activists, former Nobel Prize winners, and current and former heads of state, have signed onto a letter imploring the president to pardon Assange. The letter, which was delivered in December, urges President Trump to put a defining stamp on your presidential legacy by pardoning Julian Assange or stopping his extradition. It was signed by veteran right-wing operatives Roger Stone and Dinesh D'Souza, both of whom received pardons from the president. The former presidents of the Dominican Republic, Paraguay, Switzerland, Colombia, and Brazil also signed the letter. Other signatories include former Nobel laureates Adolfo Perez Esquivel, Mayreed Maguire, Shirin Ebadi, and Rigoberta Menchú. The U.S. prosecution of Assange is unprecedented. He faces 175 years in prison for the same publications for which he had been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. This prosecution threatens the constitutional protections that Americans hold dear. By offering a pardon to put a stop to the prosecution of Assange, your presidency will be remembered for having saved First Amendment protections for all Americans, the letter stated. President Trump will be leaving the White House with the deep state stronger than ever, having failed in every sense to restore accountability to the so-called intelligence community. So much for trust the plan, eh? And, of course, that is in the words of big league politics. So, again, we'll have to see what transpires in the next 24 hours. And, of course, not to be outdone, out of Gateway Pundit, we get President Trump issues executive order for January 22nd, 2 days after Biden's planned inauguration, proclaiming the sanctity of life. Very, very interesting. So President Trump issued another executive order today, but this one scheduled for 2 days after Joe Biden's planned for inauguration. The EO is proclaiming the sanctity of life. President Trump today issued another executive order, this one to proclaim January 22nd, 2021 as National Sanctity of Human Life Day. The unique thing about this EO is that it is after Joe Biden is expected to be sworn into office of the presidency on January 20th. And here we see the Proclamation on National Sanctity of Human Life Day 2021. The EO states, every human life is a gift to the world, whether born or unborn, young or old, healthy or sick. Every person is made in a holy image of God. The Almighty Creator gives unique talents, beautiful dreams, and a great purpose to every person. On National Sanctity of Human Life Day, we celebrate the wonder of human existence and renew our resolve to build a culture of life where every person of every age is protected, valued, and cherished. President Trump supports the right to life. And it says there, of course, we see President Trump as first sitting U.S. president to address the March for Life, which the Gateway Pundit has highlighted before. Joe Biden is endorsed by Planned Parenthood, which performs thousands of abortions annually. And, of course, there we see Gateway Pundit's coverage of that. And again, this clearly shows the president's love for life. But yes, it is very, very interesting that we would see an EO to take place after one is out of office and going into the next presidency, as it were. Or will it? Again, we'll have some questions about that here, certainly. All right, so switching gears a little bit now, let's get back into some big tech-related stuff with our big tech oligarchs, the Twitters, the Facebooks, the Googles, and the like. Well, we got an interesting piece out of Reclaim the Net yesterday. It says billionaire Frank Giustra allowed to sue Twitter in Canada for allowing spread of Pizzagate conspiracy. Well, what's interesting about this is that unfortunately Section 230 does not exist in Canada. That is only down here within these United States. But nonetheless, Frank Giustra, you guys remember who he is, right? His alliances with the Clinton Foundation, Bill Clinton certainly, pictures and that we've seen in the past, and of course he's got plenty of ties down in South America to mining, gold mining, and things of that nature. But the article continues, in Canada, Twitter doesn't have the defense of the First Amendment or Section 230, meaning it can legally be held liable for users' posts. Twitter has suffered a legal setback in Canada in a case that demonstrates the complicated nature of online defamation, since the alleged harm occurs in multiple countries ruled by different laws. In the spring of 2019, British Columbia, Canada-based billionaire Frank Giustra, a member of the board of the Clinton Foundation, decided to sue Twitter for defamation because a member of Twitter users in 2015 and 2016 linked him in their post to the so-called Pizzagate controversy. However, last July, Twitter tried to have the case dismissed or stayed, disputing Canadian court's jurisdiction in the matter and saying that Giustra should have filed in the U.S., at the same time disputing that the billionaire's reputation was substantially harmed in British Columbia and that if he had been defamed, the consequences were more likely harmful in the U.S., but the BC Supreme Court has now granted Giustra the right to proceed with the lawsuit in Canada. The Canadian press cites the judge who made the decision, Elliot Myers, as stating that one significant factor why Twitter would want the case heard in the U.S. are protections from legal action due to freedom of speech provisions in the First Amendment. And it remains to be seen during the trial if Canada extends similar protections to tech companies. But another, perhaps more significant factor for Twitter wanting the trial to take place in the U.S. is the U.S. Communications Decency Act and its Section 230 that protects providers of Internet services like Twitter from liability for user-generated content. The decision to declare the BC Supreme Court as having jurisdiction in the case doesn't prejudice its outcome, but says it will be up to Twitter to refute the claim that substantial damage to Giustra's reputation happened precisely in this Canadian province rather than in the U.S. Aha! You see what they did there? The burden of proof in this case, and Giustra, love him or hate him or not, did the right thing, and he put the burden of proof back on Twitter. So they are the ones that have to prove it. Very, very smart. Nevertheless, Twitter seems determined to stick to its Section 230 gun. So I hope this lawsuit will help raise public awareness of the real harm to society if social media platforms are not held responsible for the content posted and published on their sites, Giustra said in his reaction to the ruling, adding that recent events have demonstrated that hate speech can incite violence with deadly consequences. But these recent events also showed that although legally protected for third-party content, sites and apps can still be punished by other tech companies who decide to withdraw their services. So this is going to be an interesting one to watch. We'll have to see how this plays out in old Canada, and see how this fares, right? And of course, not to be outdone, let's head over to what the AdL is doing by way of big tech. We get this out of Information Liberation here today. It says AdL hails big tech censors. CEOs are the fourth branch of government. They're trying to hold the country together. Oh, we didn't know that. I didn't know we elected Jack and Zuckerberg and Pichai and all these guys, Bezos, and that to be our overlords and hold our country together. Did you guys know that? Did we have elections on those guys? Because I certainly don't remember that. But nonetheless, this is a position of the AdL. America is not held together by the people, but by a cadre of CEOs who censor the internet in accordance with the demands of the Anti-Defamation League, according to the AdL CEO Jonathan Greenblatt. And we get the tweet. Rania Kelleck here says CEOs have become the fourth branch of government, said Jonathan Greenblatt, chief executive of the Anti-Defamation League. They're trying to hold the country together. From the New York Times, we need to stabilize big businesses' breaks with Republicans. Says now, in the aftermath of the deadly Capitol rampage by Mr. Trump supporters, corporate America is turning its back on many senior Republicans and flexing its political muscle. One major trade group called on Mr. Trump's cabinet to consider removing him from office. Dozens of companies, from AT&T to Walmart, have said they will no longer donate to members of Congress who oppose the Electoral College certification of President-elect Joseph R. Biden Jr. And a senior House Democrat asked big banks and other financial services companies on Friday to stop processing financial transactions for people and organizations that participated in the Capitol riot. Can you say hashtag canceled, every one of you? Cancel culture run amok. Says, I can't remember a time when the business community has spoken out so strongly in opposition to an administration on so many important issues, said Rich Lesser, chief executive of Boston Consulting Group. CEOs have become the fourth branch of government, said Jonathan Greenblatt, chief executive of the AdL, which has pressured big companies to take stands on social issues. They're trying to hold the country together. The AdL 2 weeks ago demanded Trump be banned from Twitter and Facebook and impeached from the presidency. And there we see the tweet from this yin yang, especially after the violence at the Capitol. It is past time for social media companies to take responsibility for the hate and disinformation on their platforms. The hashtag Stop Hate for Profit Coalition is calling on companies to hashtag ban Trump, save democracy, and more here at Stop Hate for Profit, etc., etc. So yes, this in the words of the AdL per Mr. Greenblatt, yes. That being said, let's see, continuing on, says excellent step by @Twitter taking the necessary actions that Stop Hate for Profit demanded. A fitting end to a legacy of spewing hate and vitriol. President Trump incited the violent riots at the Capitol using social media and paid the price. Now, one small problem there, Mr. Greenblatt. It was the very platforms you purport to wield the stick that most of this happened on. Just, facts kind of matter. Maybe you should include that hashtag, facts matter. Proud of our Stop Hate for Profit Coalition, AdL, NAACP, Color of Change, Free Press, LULAC, Common Sense, Sleeping Giants, NHMC, Mozilla, and the companies, celebs, and orgs who supported us. Thank you at Sasha Baron Cohen, whose vision ignited this movement. There is more work to be done. And there we see Twitter finally banned Trump per Sasha Baron Cohen. We did it. This back on the, on the 8th now, yes. Greenblatt continues, says we cannot allow the historic and horrific events of the past 48 hours to fade without significant consequences. And our 100 plus years of history at AdL has never called for the President of the United States to be removed from office. Today, that changes. And by the way, who ultimately put them in charge of what is to be defined as hate speech? Again, did anyone elect Greenblatt to that position? Didn't know that he became the sole arbiter. Just a thought. Hashtag facts matter. The president was banned from Twitter and Facebook within 24 hours and was impeached by the House in under a week. And of course it was a sham impeachment. No real facts. We covered that in detail. First 20 pages of the 76-page pile of trash. According to Greenblatt, this is how they're saving democracy. And AdL also successfully pushes to deplatform Parler, and when they couldn't knock Gab offline, they called for Gab founder Andrew Torba to be investigated by the feds. So we know who AdL is in the back pocket of. It's really not about speech, folks. It's about wielding a big stick. And guess who funds AdL? Care to take any guesses, folks? I don't have the answer in front of me, but I would just about venture to say it's probably something along the lines of OSF. We'll leave it at that. Gab's response to the AdL and CNN, and of course, as just stated, AdL has set their sights on Gab as well. See, they just can't leave well enough alone. They can't handle it when they do not have control, period. That's it. It's not about speech. It's about wielding a big stick and democracy, mob rule. Get in line. So out of natural news, Gab has had regular contact with U.S. federal law enforcement for years to ensure our platform is not used for unlawful purposes. Public safety is our top priority. The AdL should be calling for an investigation into Facebook, where the protests were actually organized. Gab is great for a lot of things, but it is not a utility for organizing events. Facebook, on the other hand, has a dedicated events feature, and there were many event pages organizing the January 6th protests on their platform, and several massive Facebook groups as well. Facebook has billions of users, and up until last week, our site only had about 1.5 million users, although this is rapidly growing now by millions. Facebook is also home to Facebook Messenger, which, according to data, is by far the largest distributor of child pornography on the internet. Funny how the AdL doesn't seem to care about that. Secondly, back in early December, Gab put an immediate stop to a series of newly created accounts that were making threats of violence aimed at public officials. We worked diligently with law enforcement and spent several weeks warning our community about this behavior and taking swift action to remove it from our platform in the weeks prior to the January 6th protest. Our moderation and legal teams worked tirelessly to ensure public safety. Threats of violence and illegal activity have no place on Gab. And of course, you can see the response to Senator Warner from the time. The AdL has no power over Gab, which is why they hate us. It's that simple. There is absolutely nothing they can say or do to get us to censor opinions they don't like. The AdL has no other way to deplatform Gab after successfully pressuring hosting providers, payment processors, and more over the years to stop us from building the home of free speech online. So now, the AdL is lobbying the U.S. government to remove us from the internet. We will never bend to their demands, and we will never censor legal First Amendment protected speech that hurts the AdL's feelings. Ever. Jesus is king. And that was a letter penned by Mr. Torba, CEO of Gab, on the 13th. So, in essence, pound sand, AdL. And of course, obviously this can go and get much worse. Laura Loomer, of course, I've talked quite a bit about her over the years and all of the censorship that she has had to endure. Now, mind you, this is shortly after her run and campaign for Congress here recently. And, of course, we don't know whether or not that may have been stolen as well. But nonetheless, it says, exclusive, I've been banned from owning a firearm, a warning of what's to come for all conservative Americans. So she is loosely dubbed the most banned person on the internet for being off of just about every stinking platform you can possibly imagine. Now, as if it's not bad enough, the Second Amendment, which protects the First, well, if you don't have a platform to be on, well, what's to say they can't come after you and prevent you from having firearms, period. And that's exactly what's happened here. For years, Big Tech has used me as patient zero in their test case in mass deplatforming by eliminating my ability to reach the public because of my political views. Being forced to use alternative social media sites, I know I've been a little offline since I ran for Congress in President Trump's home district, Florida 21, a few months ago. But I feel compelled to reach out to you to share a shocking story about something that happened to me and is relevant to all of us. It might have seemed implausible a few years ago, but things are rapidly changing here in America. Our rights are in danger, and our republic is in a fragile place. The new bans on President Trump and conservative voices around the nation over the last 2 weeks are what I've been dealing with and actively fighting against for years. My speech on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram have been banned and eliminated. My ability to conduct business on PayPal, Venmo, GoFundMe, and other financial institutions has been banned. Chase Bank once shut down my online banking. Comcast blocked my congressional campaign from sending texts and emails to voters while they donated to my opponent. Even my ability to travel has all been restricted, as I am permanently banned on Uber and Lyft. I can't even have a sandwich delivered because I've been banned on Uber Eats. What I haven't shared with you is that last year I found out my Second Amendment rights have also been stripped without warning or explanation. That's right, I, a young woman who faces constant death threats, cannot own or possess a firearm for my own personal protection. My Second Amendment right has been banned. While I have never been convicted of a felony, domestic violence, and I've never been adjudicated mentally unfit by a judge, my name was placed in the Federal National Instant Criminal Background Check System, NICS, and I have been prohibited from ever owning or touching a firearm. And there we see the letter Annette supposedly she received. It's called red flagging. The only people who have the ability to put you in the NICS database is the FBI. I learned during my campaign for Congress that despite the fact that I have never been charged or convicted or any crime whatsoever, my name had been placed on a secret federal no-buy list maintained by the FBI, which prohibited me from my legal right to buy a firearm. My name landed on this secret no-buy list shortly after I questioned the former FBI Director James Comey at his first book signing event about a number of lies in his published memoir. I was acting entirely legally in my role as an investigative journalist and as an attendee of the event. As a result, I've lost my rights to protect myself and my home. But with your help, I will be getting my rights restored. I've been sitting on this news for months, while others help me investigate and find out why I've been red flagged. I've had the deepest background checks run against me, and I don't even have a speeding ticket. We've concluded the obvious. I had my Second Amendment rights stripped due to my political views and activism. Given that the FBI is the only organization that can put you in the NICS database, I have reason to believe that I've been targeted by the FBI. This has been extremely troubling to me because as a young woman and a public figure, I often get death threats, and I have had to call the police numerous times as well as the FBI because I've been targeted by Antifa, Islamic terrorists, and members of the radical left. And they've never come to my home and vandalized my car. I have no way to protect myself except for private security, which is costly. Just as conservative Americans are being banned from social media, banned from banking, and placed on no-fly lists across the country right now, the next step is to designate them as domestic terrorists and strip them of their gun rights. Tomorrow, on January 20th, 2021, with the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the police state is about to take unfettered power in America. Shockingly, I had the first taste of what is to come for all conservative Americans when I was detained at the Miami airport last week while flying back into the country from a brief post-election trip to El Salvador, where I was working on my upcoming book, Lumered, How I Became the Most Banned Woman in the World. I was singled out with no explanation and subjected to a thorough search. I was not allowed to grab my own suitcases from baggage claim, and I was detained for several hours while different federal officials from Department of Homeland Security interrogated me about my Wikipedia page, which states that I am a right-wing extremist and was an official Republican nominee for Congress, endorsed by President Trump. DHS officers also asked me about the events that occurred on January 6 in Washington, D.C. Needless to say, I was not in the country at the time. I know nothing about the protest at the U.S. Capitol. That's why it's so important to challenge this now, because I'm confident that I can have the red flag removed and publish the information and document the process so that others who will soon be targeted by the Dem Party for their conservative political views can do the same when this happens to them. To cover legal expenses and retain a top Second Amendment attorney to restore my gun rights and prevent this from happening to you through a national Second Amendment issue advocacy campaign, I need your help to raise $20,000. And of course, she's got a link there. I didn't want to release this information because it has made me fear for my life. I have no other option but to go public about this for the sake of warning every American of what's to come, and I have no other option but to sue the federal government over this abridgment of my Second Amendment rights. We are under attack. And so, yes, at the end of the day, this is the plan. This is where this goes. After what we had witnessed on the 6th, many folks not being put on no-fly lists. Hell, you got AOC demanding the resignation of folks like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley both. All because they don't agree with them and their ideology and toe the line. Period. That's what it amounts to. Well, not to be outdone, and perhaps maybe on a little bit of a lighter side, maybe even a little bit funny, Bernie Sanders' mural is defaced in D.C. in suspected hate crime. Interesting. Well, let's let this play through here.
Every weeknight, we're ready to go. Stay ahead of daily stories.
This is insane. We really need to do a deep dive.
Stay ahead of the conversation. I keep it real on this show.
The most beat down type of Motel 6 thing that I've ever heard of.
Stay ahead with Fox 5's Like It or Not, weeknights at 7.
Thanks there, Gwen. Meanwhile, we've been talking a lot about white supremacy after the storming of the U.S. Capitol, but what about some of the associated symbols? D.C. police are investigating one you may have seen but didn't know about before. Fox 5 is not showing the image in this report. Stephanie Ramirez has more from the Navy Yard neighborhood.
We don't know when this happened, but we do know on Saturday, one of the artists who painted the Bernie Sanders mural behind me here, this is on H Street Southeast underneath one of the 395 underpasses, they found a cartoon frog painted on the mural. And not long after police got here, we're told they contacted the Anti-Defamation League.
Oh, did you catch that? A cartoon frog. Pepe. Apparently, Pepe is now so bad and so sinister that we have to contact the AdL. Get this.
Obviously, Pepe was created in a very innocent way.
But Daron Ezekson, who heads the Washington Anti-Defamation League office, says with the rise of the alt-right and other hate groups, the cartoon frog has been adopted as a meme and started appearing in racist, anti-Semitic, and other bigoted...
Anti-Semitic and bigoted. Are you kidding me? A frog. They're afraid of a frickin' frog now.
Context.
The appropriation of that symbol became somehow an expression of power by the individuals that were doing it, and then it spread over the internet in different chat rooms, in 8chan and Reddit, and some of the places where a lot of alt-right or white supremacist folks find each other.
Oh, we're white supremacists. That's where we go to hang out on back channels and that. But in the meantime, hey, it's perfectly okay for Antifa, BLM, and the like, and that to congregate on Twitter and Facebook and user events pages just like we found out to organize and go about their business. Facts matter, AdL. Bunch of garbage. I'm going to cut that off right there. Says a mural of Senator Bernie Sanders in D.C. was vandalized with a likeness of Pepe the Frog in a suspected hate crime, police said. The colorful Burn the System artwork painted onto a concrete wall beneath Interstate 395 in the 100 block of H Street in the city's Navy Yard section was defaced sometime between December 15th and Thursday, with the cartoon image that's been adopted as a hateful meme by some alt-right extremists, police said. Do you get the irony here? So they're going after a frog, a cartoon frog, that's pasted on a mural underneath an overpass. You know, back in the day, I thought that was called graffiti. And, you know, once upon a time, you could actually get in trouble for graffitiing property that's not yours. But, hey, I digress, I guess. We got to go after the bad guys who paint frog heads in place of Bernie Sanders here. Cops were called to the site Saturday by one of the artists involved who felt the vandalism might be motivated by hate or bias of political or religious affiliation, a police report obtained by the Post shows. The artist was in the process of fixing the mural when officers responded. An investigation into the suspected hate crime, possibly motivated by anti-Jewish sentiment, is ongoing, according to the police report. Sanders, a 79-year-old independent senator from Vermont, is Jewish, the police report notes. No arrests have been made as of early Tuesday, police said. The case remains under active investigation, a Metropolitan Police spokeswoman wrote in an email. Jaron Ezekson, head of the Anti-Defamation League's Washington office, told WTTG that D.C. police have contacted the organization regarding the mural, which has since been repaired. The artwork now appears to feature a new phrase near Sanders' head that reads, "Hate has no home here." Ridiculous. Hate speech. Under an overpass, which I'm sure there's a whopping 3 people that probably walk past that daily. It's not like there's thousands of people of foot traffic or people that would congregate in a national mall, but nonetheless, ridiculous. So that being said, tonight I'll conclude with this piece from Simon Black over at Sovereign Man. And something we need to be very cognizant of is our bias, right? Our normalcy bias in all of this. So let me just get into it. Everything's fine. There's absolutely nothing to see here. It says, in the darkest corners of our human instinct lies a psychological phenomena that is the result of millions of years of evolutionary biology. It's called tonic immobility, and it refers to a form of paralysis that occurs when we're terrified and facing extreme mental or emotional trauma. Tonic immobility is common in nature. Animals in the wild will often freeze in place when confronted by a predator. The idea is that making no movement and doing absolutely nothing increases their chances of survival because the threat will simply go away. But as anyone who has ever been on a safari or seen a nature documentary knows, the danger seldom goes away on its own. This instinct to do nothing in the presence of danger runs very deep in our instincts, and it's related to a cognitive quirk within our brains that psychologists called normalcy bias. We've discussed this before. Normalcy bias is what causes human beings to believe, even in the face of obvious perils, that everything is going to be just fine. Humans are creatures of habit. We easily fall into routines, waking up, going to work, stopping by the coffee shop on the way, spending time with the family in the evening, etc. And those routines define normal for each and every one of us. When the routine is disrupted, we often have a difficult time coping, even with little things. If the bakery down the street is out of the croissant flavor that we order every morning on the way to work, we're irritated by it and don't want to break routine by trying something new. And major disruptions to our normal are met by severe psychological backlash. Our brains simply refuse to acknowledge it. This is normalcy bias. It's one of the reasons why denial is the first stage of grief. We cannot accept the loss of a loved one who has been part of our routine. Our brains won't allow it. Occasionally we might find out someone has passed, and our first reaction is, "But I just saw them last week." Again, our brains have an extremely difficult time grasping the concept that our deeply entrenched normal is about to change. And that's why, when faced with something obvious that threatens our normal, it's common for us to instinctively do nothing. Our brains are hardwired to believe that the danger will resolve itself and everything will go back to normal. Many of us felt this way in 2020. When the pandemic struck, it was terrifying. No one really understood anything about it. The media practically made it out to be a flesh-eating superbug that would vaporize everyone immediately. And in the face of this threat, it was easy for politicians to convince people to literally do absolutely nothing, stay home, and shelter in place. The idea was that if we waited long enough, if we froze in fear long enough, then the danger would pass. And people maintained a belief throughout the year that life would eventually return to normal, no matter how crazy the world became. When we were locked down in our homes, we believed that life would return to normal. When mostly peaceful protesters were rioting and raging in the streets, torching private businesses that had absolutely nothing to do with their cause, we believed that life would return to normal. When angry Marxist political candidates rage that they want to confiscate private property and nationalize entire industries, we believed that life would return to normal. Today, there are literally tanks lining in the streets of Washington, D.C., and attack helicopters roaming the skies. A new U.S. president is set to be inaugurated tomorrow with more than 20,000 troops guarding him. They have already announced sweeping legislative and policy changes, ranging from substantially higher taxes to green new no-nonsense to debilitating business regulations that will likely frustrate an already weakened economy. There is absolutely zero fiscal or monetary restraint in government. There's hardly a single policy initiative that doesn't carry at least $1 trillion price tag. No one cares about the national debt, which is set to reach $30 trillion within the next few months, or the fact that the central bank's balance sheet will likely pass $10 trillion this year. Their solution to everything is to squash productivity and print money. Yet still, countless people believe that life will return to normal. For them, part of their normal is that America is safe, stable, and powerful, and always will be. Their brains simply cannot accept a reality in which the country they love so dearly has changed, and it's not going back. This is normalcy bias, and it compels countless people to do absolutely nothing in the face of obvious threats. When you see a government racking up trillions of dollars a year in wasteful new debt, and a central bank printing trillions of dollars of new money, a rational person would take steps to preserve his or her savings. When the Treasury Secretary states in black and white that the Social Security trust funds will run out of money in a few years, a rational person would take steps to safeguard his or her retirement. When the nation has become so fractured in conflict that it takes tanks and 20,000 plus troops to hold a ceremony in the Capitol, a rational person would create a Plan B and have some backup options. But normalcy bias makes us believe that everything is going back to normal. So we freeze in place and do nothing. And there are plenty of solutions to mitigate these threats, but the most important thing to do right now is overcome normalcy bias. And of course he goes into some of his stuff for selling his product here, but nonetheless, you kind of get the idea, right? At the end of the day, we look at these things, and many people have reason to believe, as part of the COVID business, that things are going to somehow magically return to normal. But that isn't the case, right? If you look at what the Mockingbird media would tell us, they think that this stuff is going to go on indefinitely. Get jabbed with a needle, wear a mask indefinitely. 100 days we're going to be under this under Biden, perhaps, right? When do we return to normal? That was never the plan, folks. It's not in their interest for us to return to what we perceive to be a normal. Again, thinking of COVID-19, the election, all of that, what has that really been cover for? All of this under the guise of what they plan, per the Davos World Economic Forum types, the Klaus Schwabs of the world, their great reset. Total control over you. Period. That's it. Do you think we're going to have a return to normal? Oh no, that isn't the case. So nonetheless, that's what I'll conclude with here this evening. A lot of what ifs. You know, we can sit here and pontificate what if things go the way we think they're supposed to go tomorrow? What if they don't? What if things go awry? What do we do? What if there's a delay or anything along those lines that we think should probably happen that would perhaps take some of these guys out? We don't know. A lot of what ifs, and maybe tomorrow we'll start to see some of those answers. And so that's what we'll conclude with here this evening. We'll have more tomorrow. I'll be over on the 5x5 channel for our regular broadcast tomorrow, so we'll see you back on that side tomorrow. And so in the meantime, appreciate you guys tuning in. Appreciate you guys getting over on YouTube, Twitch, DLive. If you're not subscribed, get on over to those platforms. We'll get Tiger Network back aboard next time, and we'll go from there. So we'll see you again tomorrow. Take care. God bless everybody, and we'll see you then.